Hello, my name is Ken, and I'm here with Ashley, and we're going to talk about our Sudoku game that we have been working on so far this semester. Sudoku is a game is pretty simple. You have a 9 by 9 grid of squares, and you try to fill each of the squares with 1 through 9, and each row can only have one instance of each number, 1 through 9, and each column can only have each number once as well. So to get us started, we want to start with our main class that we've implemented, which is the board class. The board class is a representation of the game board, the grid that we have. So it contains an array of cells, and the cells represent each individual square in our grid. And in order to interact with our game board, we have generated a couple functions that help us work with it. The first is a method called setValueAt, and you pass it the row, the column, and the value that you want to set. And what it will do is it'll go into our array and grab out that cell, and if there actually is a cell there, if there's an actual object, it will set the value. If there isn't an object there, it will create a new cell, and then set the value, and then add that square into the array. We also generated another function called getValueAt that you pass it the row and the column, and it will go into the array and return back whatever the value is. If there isn't an actual square there yet because it's uninitialized, it will return 0, which we've taken to mean nothing in our application. So the board has a variety of private methods that it holds. So again, it has the cell, the array of cells. We also have these things called cell groups. And what a cell group is a simple collection of cells. So for instance, a row would be a cell group, or a column would be a cell group, or a subsquare would be a cell group. And each cell group knows which cells are in it and which values it is currently allowed to have still. So going back to our board.java, we also have an isValid, so that later on when you finish the game we can run a check to make sure that the board is valid, and the difficulty, which we're going to use to determine how many blank squares there are when you see the board. For our cell class, we have a couple of instance variables. We have a value, which is the number in the square, and then also a listing of all of the groups that this cell belongs to. And then we've created getters and setters for those. So getValue will return back that value, and setValue will stick a value there. And you can see these at work in our main class, the Sudoku 260 class. Here's our main function. We create a new game which calls getName and displayHelp, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And then we generate a new board. We create a new square, and we set its value to 8. And then so that was our test to make sure that the cell class was working correctly. And then to test our game board, we did the board.setValueAt 004. So the idea behind that was it should set the square at 0, 0, row 0, column 0 to be 4. And then we call getValue to make sure that it works. And then we call getValue again, or getValueAt to make sure that that works. And then we also call this getDifficulty to test that that is all working correctly. We also test our cell group class, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Lastly, our getName and displayHelp method is pretty straightforward. It looks a lot like what most of us have in our groups, where we set up an input, we prompt the user to enter their name, and then they enter it, and we set it to this.playerName, which we have up here as a private instance variable. Then also for displayHelp, we do system.out.println this.instructions, which again refers to this instance variable right here. So these are the functions that we wrote and included in our class so far as part of the Week 2 paired programming assignment. And Ashley's going to take over, and she's going to talk about what we've done for this week's assignment of implementing another function into our game.
Okay, so for our week 3 assignment, we added the isValueAllowed function, and it performs a calculation to check that the number that the user has input into the square is a number that will work in our Sudoku game. So first we start with our int variable, and that's our first primitive variable type. And we use the less than, greater than, and the or logical operators in that first if statement. And then we take the input, and if the input is a valid number between 1 and 9, it will return true and jump down to the for statement. And if not, it'll return false. And so we added the double escape. Well, we casted the variable as a double for checking, just for the purpose of the assignment, so that we could meet all the requirements. And it converts the int variable to a double, so it just includes a decimal. And that's what the second half right here is doing. And yeah, we use the equals operator, cast it to a double. We also use the plus plus increment operator in our loop, and that just adds 1 each time the loop runs. And yep, that was our function for that one.
Yeah. So our game's coming along pretty nicely. I'll run it through here real quick, just to show everyone that we're making some good progress here. So when you click run, it prompts you for your name, which you can put, and then these are all warning messages generated by a new function we're working on that generates a Sudoku board. So we have the basics in place to test the game, and we're making extensive use of that isValueAllowed function that we wrote, and everything seems to be working great. So yeah, thank you guys for your time, and hope your projects are going well as well.